do me a favor? Just turn around. We do have to cuff you up. Go and put your hands behind your back.
Any chance that you're pregnant?
No.
An Ohio woman is detained by U.S. Marshals after an 8-month-old boy is found dead.
Do me a favor. Just turn around. We do have to cuff you up. Go and put your hand behind your back. Can you tell us that you're pregnant? No. That is the voice of a U.S. Marshal on July 21st, addressed to 45-year-old Melanie DiMarzio. The words are procedural, calm, almost routine. But listen to what follows. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, Melanie! Take a deep breath. The body camera is recording a disintegration. A woman hyperventilating in her own driveway, hands pulled behind her back. The sound you are hearing is not just panic. It is the sound of a closed system colliding with the public record. Before we go deeper into what the documents actually show, make sure you're subscribed to True Crime Court, because we don't just cover the story, we follow the evidence.
8-month-old Grant Simmons, and this was taken from his obituary. Quote, though Grant's time here was not nearly long enough, he touched the lives of all those who were lucky enough to know him. Grant was full of life and was always smiling. He enjoyed Coco Melon and his toy excavator. He will always be remembered.
But to understand why that arrest happened, you need to see the room that no camera entered. Picture a toy excavator, the kind an 8-month-old grips with his whole hand, placed on a shelf in a house in East Canton, Ohio. It sat there on March 10th, silent, while paramedics worked. The child who held it, Grant Simmons, was pronounced deceased a short time later. His obituary records what the civil complaint cannot. Quote, Grant was full of life and was always smiling. He enjoyed Coco Melon and his toy excavator. He will always be remembered as his mommy's little stink. That toy excavator is the visual anchor of this case. It represents everything that was supposed to be protected inside those walls and everything the paperwork already knew.
Guilty, but I want to jump right into it here. So all of this begins on March 10th of this year. It is 1:39 in the afternoon when an officer with the East Canton Police Department responds to a home to help paramedics with a medical emergency. And this medical emergency involves an 8-month-old boy. And
here is what the incident report tells us. On March 10th at 1:39 in the afternoon, an East Canton police officer responded to a home to assist paramedics with a medical emergency involving an 8-month-old boy.
An 8-month-old boy, and his name was Grant Simmons. When the officer arrives, medics were already on their way to the hospital. So the responding officer talked to a woman who was still present at the home. It's a 45-year-old woman. Her name is Melanie DiMarzio. According to the incident report, DiMarzio pointed the officer in the direction of Simmons' mom, who is also still at the home. The officer and the patient's mom then go to the hospital.
The officer interviewed a woman still present at the home, Melanie DiMarzio. She pointed him toward the child's mother. Then the officer accompanied the mother to the hospital, where emergency staff attempted to revive Grant.
The hospital. Now, as emergency staff attempted to revive the 8-month-old boy, the officer spoke with his mom. Quote, she advised that she dropped off her son to the babysitter earlier in the morning when the babysitter later contacted her by phone, stating that the child was not breathing. She stated that she spoke to her by phone at approximately 1:20 p.m. She stated that she had no indication of what could have happened to the child. A nurse came into the hallway and assisted the mother.
The mother told the officer she had dropped her son off that morning. The babysitter called her at approximately 1:20 p.m. to say the child was not breathing. She had no indication of what could have happened. A nurse then assisted the mother into a room where her son was pronounced deceased.
It is unclear exactly what caused Simmons' death, but there is a civil complaint that was filed by the village of East Canton that paints a chilling picture of DiMarzio's daycare operation. So the court documents were filed on March 20th after the city learned that she was planning to reopen her daycare on March 23rd, which is just...
Here the narrative fractures. The cause of death remains officially undetermined. But a civil complaint filed by the village of East Canton on March 20th reveals an entirely different dimension to this house. The city learned DiMarzio intended to reopen her daycare on March 23rd, 13 days after an infant died on the premises
of this case. Now, when police interviewed DiMarzio, she allegedly had difficulty recalling how many children she babysat on a day-to-day basis, but she reportedly said she has between 5 and 10 children that she babysits at the property in exchange for $45 per day paid in
When
cash.
police interviewed DiMarzio, She allegedly had difficulty recalling how many children she watched on any given day, then estimated between 5 and 10 children. She charged $45 per child per day paid in cash.
Allegations. Quote, officers learned that defendant Melanie DiMarzio did not have appropriate supervision or sleeping arrangements for infants and toddlers at the property. Defendant Melanie DiMarzio indicated she would either prepare food for children at the property or otherwise give children food provided by parents. Defendant Melanie DiMarzio did not have current CPR certification or any other medical training. It did not have any formal protocol for administering medications such as Tylenol, eye drops, or amoxicillin, but informed officers she would follow any instructions given to her by parents. Defendant Melanie DiMarzio admitted that she had no emergency plan in place for former protocol in the event of a fire or other emergency at the property.
Now read directly from the civil complaint. Quote, officers learned that defendant Melanie DiMarzio did not have appropriate supervision or sleeping arrangements for infants and toddlers. Defendant did not have current CPR certification or any other medical training. Defendant admitted that she had no emergency plan in place for the event of a fire or other emergency at the property. Defendant further acknowledged that she did not utilize any baby monitors or cameras at the property to monitor children housed in different areas.
Defendants had at least 5 children staying at the property, including him, 2 children who were 23 months old, a 1-year-old child, a 3-year-old child, and a 4-year-old child. For one of the children, who was 1-year-old, defendant Melanie DiMarzio informed officers with the East Canton Police Department that she did not know the child's last name. In addition to DiMarzio's alleged lack of responsibility within the daycare's operation, the lawsuit also accuses the business itself of being unlicensed, exceeding Ohio's limits on the number
On
of
the date Grant Simmons died, the complaint alleges DiMarzio had at least 5 children at the property. Grant, 2 23-month-olds, a 1-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 4-year-old. For one of the 1-year-olds, DiMarzio informed officers she did not know the child's last name. The lawsuit also states the operation exceeded Ohio's limits on children under age 2 and never obtained a conditional zoning certificate.
As a result of these allegations, the civil complaint seeks to shut down DiMarzio's daycare for good, in addition to monetary damages. The same day the lawsuit was filed, a temporary restraining order was placed on the daycare, meaning it needed to cease operations immediately pending a further hearing. That order was converted into a preliminary injunction on March 31st, so the daycare will no longer be able to...
A temporary restraining order was placed on the house the same day the lawsuit was filed. A preliminary injunction followed on March 31st. The daycare was ordered to cease operations. That is the civil side, but here is the real ticking clock question. If a child dies in an unlicensed facility and the operator tries to reopen 13 days later, how many other homes in this country are running right now, completely invisible, waiting for a knock?
And this happens, unfortunately. You'll see these daycare centers, the only time you know about these unlicensed ones is when something happens badly. And that's the issue you have here. I feel for the family. You know, this is, you're put in a bad spot. You are. You don't know what to do. This person has maybe a word of mouth. We don't know how she advertised her business, because it is a business when you start almost warehousing kids in your house. That's a warehousing thing, and thereby it's a business. No signs to say to daycare center, just word of mouth. I gather what happened. And those kids, I don't know what her relationship was to the parents.
The only time we know about these unlicensed centers is when something happens badly. And consider what DiMarzio's own alleged statements reveal. No baby monitors. Multiple rooms. Infants separated by walls. You place a child in a crib, close a door, and trust that silence means sleep. That is the gap between what was promised, care, and what was delivered. An operation where the caregiver did not even know the full names of the children entrusted to her. The paperwork already knew.
And DiMarzio is indicted by a grand jury on a felony first-degree charge of involuntary manslaughter, a third-degree felony charge of endangering children, and another third-degree felony charge of involuntary manslaughter. If convicted on all counts, she could face more than 20...
The criminal escalation came on July 16th. A grand jury indicted DiMarzio on 1 first-degree felony count of involuntary manslaughter and 2 third-degree felony counts of endangering children and involuntary manslaughter. If convicted on all counts, She faces more than 20 years in prison and over $40,000 in fines.
Arrested, which was on July 21st by the East Canton Police Department with assistance from the U.S. Marshals 5 days after she was indicted by that grand jury. But this is how that played out on police body cam footage.
5 days later, on July 21st, East Canton Police, with assistance from U.S. Marshals, arrested her at her home.
Take a deep breath. It's just a warning. I can't go anywhere until she called me.
What? You guys transporting anyone else here?
Step on down here. Take a deep breath.
We
can. Don't fall down. Do me a favor. Just turn around. We do have to cuff you up. Go ahead and put your hands behind your
Any
back.
chance that you're pregnant?
No.
Okay.
No. My.
Just relax. Palms together. Keep praying. There you go.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God.
Melanie, take a deep breath. Hey, Aaron.
The body camera captures what a grand jury indictment does not. Just take a deep breath. Just don't worry. I can't go anywhere. Do me a favor. Just turn around. We do have to cuff you up. Go ahead and put your hands behind your back. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. Melanie, take a deep breath. She is hyperventilating, nearly collapsing, and the marshals repeatedly tell her to breathe. The arrest process itself was smooth. The defendant was unconsolable.
Thousands of these. The only time we find out about these daycare centers being unlicensed is when a tragedy like this happens. And to have an 8-month-old die in their custody, and families, and again, I talk always about the legal side and the police side of it, but there's a social side to this where if you have
But here is what that tape cannot capture: the invisible architecture of this tragedy, the social architecture. Licensed daycare costs thousands per month. $45 a day is a number that does not ask questions. A parent works, drops off a child, and assumes the transaction secures safety. The investigation exposes everything that transaction did not include. No certification, no monitors, no emergency plan, no record of who was even inside the house.
Operation.
Yeah, that's a big thing. And when I saw that she tried to reopen it after this incident, and I don't know if she had any prior incidents, and that's something they're looking into, any 911 calls or 311 calls, any aides that went to that house. So, but to do that, on a legal perspective, it seemed there's the lack of caring, negligence, maybe to that point where you think your system is better than what it is. I mean, you have a death of a child in your care. Whether the child died at the residence or at the hospital, it doesn't matter. To sit there and say, what I did was okay, I'll get...
And then the audacity. Before the civil complaint was even filed, DiMarzio had reportedly planned to reopen. Think about that. A child dies in your care. The cause remains undetermined. And your response, just days later, is to resume operations as though the machinery of your household business had simply paused for maintenance. That detail alone reframes every legal motion that followed.
Life.
Well, that's the issue. Now you have, when we talk about an autopsy determines the cause of death, the manner of death. Sometimes the manner of death is undetermined. In New York, we call them circumstances unknown, pending police investigation, called a CUPI. So it's based on the police investigation moving forward to determine whether or not what she did at that time and place was negligent. And unfortunately, I hate to say this, do babies die in these circumstances? They do. We don't know at that point.
The autopsy has not been publicly released. The manner of death may remain undetermined, but the charges are involuntary manslaughter and child endangerment, and those charges do not require proof of intentional harm. They require proof of negligence, of conditions so far beneath the legal standard of care that the risk itself becomes the crime. The civil complaint already established the conditions. The criminal case will determine whether those conditions killed Grant Simmons.
A reasonable doubt.
When it comes to the job of an investigator in this case, because on one hand, you are investigating the death of this child. On the other hand, to your point, I mean, there's thousands, tens of thousands of unlicensed daycares that are going on today right now. And we do see really sad cases like this one, unfortunately happen far too often. What work, and it seems like, the city side of it, the town is making efforts to try and...
But this case, at its core, is not just about one woman. It is about the gap that licensed systems leave behind. Tens of thousands of unlicensed daycares operate in this country right now. Parents need affordable care. Unlicensed providers fill the gap, and the system only sees them when a child stops breathing. The paperwork already knew.
DiMarzio was booked into the Stark County Jail on a $100,000 bond, which was posted 2 days after her arrest. According to her court docket, she is required to wear a GPS monitor in addition to other pretrial release conditions. She is due back in court for a pretrial hearing on August 19th, and we're going to be sure to monitor this case as it continues to unfold. But before we bring in our guest, retired NYPD...
DiMarzio was booked into Stark County Jail on a $100,000 bond. Posted 2 days later, she is required to wear a GPS monitor. A criminal pretrial hearing is set for August 19th. The civil trial is slated for December 28th. 2 separate tracks, 1 death, 1 question that remains unanswered.
8-month-old Grant Simmons, and this was taken from his obituary. Quote, though Grant's time here was not nearly long enough, he touched the lives of all those who were lucky enough to know him. Grant was full of life and was always smiling. He enjoyed Coco Melon and his toy excavator. He will always be remembered.
And so we return to that toy excavator. It sat on a shelf in a room with no baby monitor, in a house with no emergency plan, watched by a woman who could not name every child present. If you want to see what preceded this case, the East Canton civil complaint is public record. Read it. Then ask yourself in the comments, what did the village of East Canton know, and when did they know it? If this coverage matters to you, make sure to like this video, share it, subscribe to True Crime Court, and turn on notifications. We'll be here when the next hearing date arrives.